Afternoon and welcome to the first webinar training on operationalizing TNFD's LEAP approach from framework to practice, co-organized by the Business Environmental Council, Hong Kong Green Finance Association, and the Taskforce on Nature-related Financial Disclosures. My name is Jenny Lee, the Deputy Secretary General at HKGFA. As the co-conveners of TNFD's Hong Kong Consultation Group, HK and GFA and BEC are committed to building capacity to support local market development and integration of nature-related considerations into business strategy. We are deeply grateful for the support of TNFD, our esteemed industry experts, and members joining us on today's webinar. This webinar is the first of a two-part series designed for use by organizations of all sizes and across all sectors and geographies, moving from concept to implementation on the identification and assessment of nature-related dependencies and how to start using the TNFD's LEAP approach. Today's webinar will cover the LEAP framework in practice, focusing first on the locate and evaluate stage. We are honored to have Candice Stott from TNFD to share the latest market developments, followed by presentations from WWF Risk Filter and the Integrated Biodiversity Assessment Tool, IBAT, who are providing tools to assess business resilience and how to enhance nature-related reporting. And after this, we'll have a fireside chat with ERM and Gammon, moderated by BEC, on how to start your journey with case study sharings, followed by Q&A. We will have time for Q&A after each of the presentations and fireside chat, so please do put your questions in the Q&A box, which is located on the Zoom. Also, if you need to claim SFC CPT points, please do not forget to complete the survey at the end of this webinar. So to kick off, I'll just provide a short opening remarks. And I'm really heartened to share that, with everybody joining on this call today, we have over 500 registered participants. And despite the market volatility, we're still seeing nature and biodiversity continue to move up the agenda in Asia for regulators, investors, and corporates. And I think this is really in recognition of the climate and nature and how they are both inextricably linked. For us in Asia, home to many of the planet's biodiversity hotspots, climate change is accelerating biodiversity loss from coral and mangroves to forest and freshwater systems, making climate impacts more severe, eroding natural buffers against floods, storms, heat, and droughts. And so financial institutions and corporates need to have an integrated approach across locations, supply chains, and across their portfolios to really manage climate in tandem with nature. We have seen at the global level frameworks such as the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity and TNFD set very clear directions of travel on how we and organizations can start to manage and disclose on these nature-related risks and opportunities in the same way that we are doing for climate. In Hong Kong, the Hong Kong Exchange new climate requirements mandates listed issuers disclose in line with the ISSB, IFRS S1 and S2, and TNFD's architecture explicitly aligns with the ISSB, signaling and creating a ready-made backbone for nature-related disclosures. In addition, Hong Kong updated its Biodiversity Strategy Action Plan last year, setting a city-level biodiversity strategy up to 2035. And there are a growing pipeline of TNFD adopters here and active market players such as financial institutions, NGOs, and other service providers really leading capacity building initiatives to help support this market development. The TNFD Hong Kong Consultation Group was launched in 2025 for exactly that purpose, aiming to build awareness and capacity to support the voluntary adoption of TNFD-aligned reporting and help shift financial flows towards nature-positive outcomes in line with global biodiversity goals. And we have convened 2 in-person workshops and this webinar to help accelerate and address some of these barriers through peer learning and insights. So with that, I would like to hand over and welcome our first presenter, Ms. Candice Stott, Director of Global Market Engagement at TNFD. Candice is an accomplished business leader, very much known for driving sustainable growth, with over 20 plus years of experience in global financial services, where she has most recently worked for the London Stock Exchange Group and prior to that, Bloomberg. So with that, I'll pass the floor to Candice.
Thanks so much, Jenny, and welcome everyone. Thank you for inviting me to join you on this webinar. As Jenny introduced, I lead our global market engagement activities as well as capacity building within the TNFD Secretariat Leadership Team. I'd really like to begin quickly thanking the Hong Kong Green Finance Association and the Business Environment Council teams for convening today's webinar. Your active roles as that TNFD consultation group co-conveners in Hong Kong is greatly valued. Thank you in advance also to the other speakers for your leadership. I think we are definitely very, very blessed to have your collaboration and sharing practical sessions like today. It's really helping advance a critical shift, I believe, in sustainable finance and helping to bring nature and biodiversity into financial and corporate decision making, as well as helping to operationalize it, which is really critical. Nature loss can present material economic financial risks to organizations. Many of us already know that. There's a lot of evidence. But managing these risks effectively is essential to maintaining the resilience and competitiveness of Hong Kong's economy and financial system. While sectors such as fishery and tourism are all closely tied to nature, the economy's broader exposure to nature and biodiversity, as well as ecosystem services within that, are often less visible, but equally significant. So just looking at sectors such as finance, real estate, infrastructure, transportation, manufacturing, all greatly depend on ecosystem services, either directly or through resources that we sometimes take for granted, like water availability, water quality, coastal protection, the importance of climate regulation, and then indirectly through the ever increasingly precarious supply chains that rely on stable natural systems. So the question is no longer whether nature-related risks matter for business resilience. Quite frankly, I think it's about how organizations choose to respond, and webinars and some of the speakers today should help you with some of those options. Webinars showcase market tools. You're going to hear about two key ones and have some great experience from the panelists in the fireside chats. I think they help highlight the tools and approaches that can be used to get started, and also a lot to learn from. These speakers all span having had experience across different types of organizations, different types of sectors, where really that should help you adapt your approach to how to use the tools and where to prioritize your next steps. What I love the most about the work that I do is often seeing how organizations, quite frankly, are so willing to share their experiences, discuss their challenges, and also share ways to overcome those challenges. So often this is through collaboration and collaborating with national partners, many of whom are on the webinar today. In addition to today's presentations, please also do look at the TNFD website. We spend a lot of time curating content on our website. And I particularly call out under our knowledge area, our knowledge hub, looking for additional case studies and LEAP use cases. They're all available on the website. I lead our market global engagement. So that really talks a lot about TNFD adoption. We continue to see a strong momentum with over 760 global organizations committed to adopting the TNFD, with more than 50% of those coming from the Asia Pacific region, with Japan leading that number. These adopters all represent pretty significant numbers, $22 trillion in assets under management. They come from adopters across 56 countries and 64 SASB sectors. We're also spending a lot of time looking at reporting now, because when you adopt, you commit to public reporting. And we know of more than 600 organizations who've already published disclosures aligned with the TNFD recommendations. Also, many of them you can see on our website, and some of those organizations are in Hong Kong and mainland China. Many more are using the TNFD's LEAP approach to identify where nature-related risks and opportunities sit within their operations, value chains, and portfolios, and to how they're using that to uncover nature-related opportunities and new product opportunities. This momentum really, I think, reflects three key shifts: growing investor demand for decision-useful nature-related information, increased recognition of nature as a systemic financial risk, and the emergence of financial innovation to support nature-positive outcomes and some of those nature-related opportunities. In Hong Kong and mainland China, TNFD adoption is still at a relatively early stage, but growing steadily. We currently have 13 adopters in Hong Kong and 16 adopters in mainland China, so a total of 29 organizations already committed to making public disclosures aligned with the TNFD. We're also seeing organizations across these sectors all looking at different stages of their maturity, undertaking internal nature-related risk assessments and investing in their resources to build deeper knowledge and expertise. So I really look forward to this webinar, helping to mobilize the conversation from awareness to practical application, and from why this matters to how to get started. So where do organizations get started? That's LEAP, really. The TNFD developed the LEAP approach as a practical step-by-step method to support organizations with their identification, assessment, prioritization, and management of their nature-related dependencies, impacts, risks, and opportunities. The LEAP approach is designed to be used as an internal assessment tool within your organization and involves 4 phases: locating your interface with nature, evaluating your dependencies and impacts on nature, assessing your nature-related risks and opportunities to your organization, and then preparing to respond and manage. LEAP is designed to be flexible and iterative. This is really important. We don't expect it to be linear or a once-off activity. We see many organizations jumping between LEAP phases. They go back to phases. They repeat elements over time. They go deeper. Many financial institutions, such as banks and asset managers, also start with evaluate before they can do locate. Try those things out. It can seem overwhelming all in one go. Break LEAP into parts and adjust over time, and you choose the sequencing and what components to use that fit your organizational needs. There is also an important silent S, and for obvious reasons, we didn't call it sleep. But this is a critical first step before you embark on your LEAP journey. That is the scoping phase where you prepare. That is where you agree, you get stakeholder buy-in on what you want to achieve and the required people and capacity to do the work. LEAP is not required to be incorporated in your TNFD disclosures, although we see many organizations referencing their LEAP assessments within their reports. LEAP is also starting where you can, building capability over time and improving decision-making based on your LEAP assessment results. And importantly, this isn't all just about risk, it's also about uncovering and recognizing that nature-related opportunities are just as important. And in fact, many TNFD adopters are already reporting changes to strategy and helping identify tangible business opportunities that are good for business and nature. And of course, some challenges exist. 2 of the most frequently cited challenges in the first TNFD status report are knowledge and skills, as well as data availability and quality. We remain committed to working with market participants and addressing some of these barriers. Nature beyond climate is more complex, but learning about it doesn't have to be. And I think in sessions like today, helping provide practical entry points with local examples of how to get started using LEAP and the available tools and resources are really important. Each of us have a role to play in building capacity, helping shift mindsets, building confidence, and showing what is already possible. The TNFD provides these essential building blocks, I call it scaffolding, for market participants to evolve their nature brains. We've spent a lot of time on our climate brains, so we've got to adapt. What matters is building that capacity step by step and creating a culture of learning by doing. Looking ahead, as Jenny mentioned, Hong Kong was among some of the first jurisdictions globally to commit to fully adopting the ISSB standards with a structured and phased approach. In November of last year, the ISSB moved into a standard setting process on nature-related risks and opportunities, drawing on the disclosures of the TNFD, including relevant aspects of LEAP. And I think it's important that the TNFD continues to support the ISSB on its nature-related disclosure work. And we look forward to the exposure draft to be released around COP17 in October and the market feedback that will follow that release. Organizations that begin to understand their dependencies, impacts, risks, and opportunities will be far better prepared for these changes. Let me close with the following. We do not have the luxury of waiting for perfect data, for regulation, or for others to move first. The TNFD framework, the multiple tools you will hear about today, and the guidance already exists. What you need now is action. Action to build capacity. Action to integrate nature into decision making action to unlock the opportunities that come from this work. Hong Kong has a unique role to play, not only as a financial center globally, but as a catalyst for change across the whole Asia region. After this webinar, I hope you can see that learning by doing is both possible and necessary. Organizations and individuals can learn from others, irrespective of where you are in your own nature maturity journey. Continue to build your capability over time. And thank you for your leadership, your engagement, and your commitment. And I really wish you a productive and meaningful session, and I hope I can contribute to that. Thank you, Jenny.
Great. Thank you so much, Candice. And we have actually put the TNFD Knowledge Hub and resources in the webinar chat, so do please check that out. I think the call to action, the flexibility, you don't have to start with L and ending with P. I think implementation is hard enough, and scoping, there's a lot of information to also provide at the board level to convince kind of like seniors as to why this needs to be taken on board now. And so next we will move on to our next speaker, which is Megan Sim, Program Officer with the IBAT team, and she supports the strategic business development and high-profile engagements for initiatives within the Asia Pacific, where she's really looking at how do we take a lot of this complex nature-related reporting data points and how do we utilize these and put these into our business strategies. So with that, I'll pass the floor on to Megan. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. Thank you for having me, and welcome everyone joining us online. So I am Megan Sim, an IBRAD Program Officer based in Singapore, supporting businesses and financial institutions in this region. So we have heard today about the growing expectations around nature-related reporting and also the need for organizations to understand how they interact with nature. One of the messages highlighted by our previous speaker is the data challenge. And how do we then move to the next step to take practical actions? So in this next couple of minutes, I'll introduce IBAT, the Integrated Biodiversity Assessment Tool, and show how it can help be used as a practical starting point to help organizations apply the TNFD LEAP approach, particularly the locate phase. So IBAT is a web-based map and early-stage risk screening tool that provides access to global authoritative biodiversity datasets, which can be used for early-stage impact, risk, and opportunity screening. The IBAT Alliance is formed between the partnerships of these four organizations: BirdLife International, Conservation International, the IUCN, and the United Nations Environment Programme World Conservation Monitoring Center, or UNEP-WCMC. IBAT helps you prioritize where to look more closely, but it doesn't replace site surveys or on-the-ground EIAs. Access to the platform is subscription-based, ranging from the free versions to a couple of paid tiers. So your use supports the maintenance of the underlying global datasets, with IBAT already reinvesting back $2.5 million into our alliance partners and the datasets in 2024. You can also access various features like reports, GIS downloads, or APIs according to your business needs. These are the three core datasets held on the platform itself. You have your world database on protected and conserved areas. This includes things like your UNESCO World Heritage Sites, Ramsar wetlands, or even OECMs. This database is updated every month and managed by the Protected Planets team under UNEP-WCMC. We have the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species managed by IUCN, basically the barometer of life. This database is updated twice a year. It covers the species of both flora, fauna, terrestrial, marine, freshwater environment globally. The IUCN Red List also has the derived data called the Species Threat Abatement and Restoration, or STAR metric, which I'll not dive so much into today, but for those who are interested, you can find out more on the website how STAR helps with finding opportunities to reducing species extinction risk by identifying threats to species. And third, we have the World Database on Key Biodiversity Areas. This is also updated twice a year, and this is managed by BirdLife International on behalf of the KBA partnership. So KBAs are basically biodiversity hotspots across the world, with only about 50% being under legal protection. So the other 50% still remains important for biodiversity and still remains important for businesses and financial institutions to keep a lookout for. So before diving into how the platform supports TNFD, I wanted to cover a couple of broader use cases. So these datasets are widely referenced in frameworks and finance requirements. So from TNFD, which we'll hear more about later, and CSRD to safeguards like the IFC Performance Standard 6. From a reputational or regulatory angle, screening helps flag locations where operations can face heightened reputational or regulatory risks. IBET can also support you in prioritizing efforts and resources. So by focusing deeper into assessments where biodiversity sensitivity is higher, these datasets can be referenced into areas which can contribute towards the OECM's expansions, or for a business looking at protection and also restoration of different habitats for a nature-positive future. So now here we talk about IBET and TNFD. So we focus on L4 of the locate phase in the LEAP framework. TNFD asks for organizations to start by locating their interface with nature, especially in or near sensitive locations. TNFD defines an ecologically sensitive location if it falls under one or more of these 5 criteria. Places important for biodiversity or ecosystem integrity, areas of rapid decline, high water risk, or important ecosystem services, including for indigenous people and local communities. Whilst IBET does not cover all 5 areas, it tackles the point on identifying areas of high biodiversity importance, including for species. It allows you to identify whether or not your sites overlap with or are close to those biodiversity sensitive areas to prioritize them for the next LEAP approaches. You can see here a screenshot from the LEAP guidance document, which is on the TNFD website, on some of the recommended metrics and reference datasets, of which the 3 core IBET datasets are mentioned, namely the protected areas, the key biodiversity areas, and the IUCN Red List of threatened species. IBET is also listed as a tool in the TNFD locate resources. You can navigate to it easily directly from the TNFD website. What you see here is similar to one of the free functionalities we also have on our platform called the IBET Data Map. You can input your site locations and then overlay them with the different data layers of protected areas, key biodiversity areas, and the star metrics to gather a very high-level view of your site and portfolio. You can start by signing up for a free account on the website and upload your sites on the platform. You can do so by uploading individual sites like what you saw previously, or bulk upload up to 3,000 sites at once through Excel files with your coordinate points or through various shapefiles. You can then view them on the data map and also individual site pages. If you want to gather further details on your site, you can then opt for one of the 6 paid report downloads. So the 2 screenshots here you see on the slide, this belongs to the disclosure preparation report, which was designed to align with the L4 phase of TNFD LEAP, GRI 101 on biodiversity, and also the ESRS E4 of CSRD. It allows for users to analyze up to 1,000 sites at once and provides you with an output to understand which of your sites are in or near an ecologically sensitive location, and also breaks down the data points in an Excel, plus presents a visual map of all your sensitive locations. For those GIS users, you can also then access or download site-specific GIS datasets or access global GIS layers for each IBET datasets, such as the species ranges shown in this particular screenshot. So just 30 seconds on what the platform looks like. Once you log in, this is what you would see. It's very intuitive. You can create your new sites directly onto the platform itself by dropping points on the map, drawing a polygon, or even drawing lines on the map itself. Once you have uploaded your locations, what you would then get is then a visual map of each of the sites.
Just wanting to check, Megan, you seem to have stopped the line. Okay. Okay, I guess whilst Megan is basically logging back in, Look, I think just to summarize, you please do put your questions in the chat box. Don't be shy. And if you do have questions after this session, please do feel free to reach out to the group, the TNFD consultation group, and we'll be more than happy to put you directly in contact with the fellow speakers here. I think often, data is a key reason why we hear corporates or financial institutions, saying that the feedback of why the inclusion of nature, and disclosures is not being taken upon at this point in time. There's a lot of fragmented and inconsistent information. But I think what's great to see here with the IBAT tool is that there are, already available tools that are free that can help you start on this journey. So regardless of how challenging it might seem, there are these tools that are location specific that will help you translate some of these like biodiversity data points into actionable insights. So whilst we wait for Megan to get online, perhaps what we can do is just move quickly to Karen. So the tool that Karen will be presenting is really the WWF risk filter. That's a continuation to help identify location-specific biodiversity risks and sensitivities. And then through kind of like her sharing, you'll be able to see how this can actually feed into strategy development and risk assessment. Now, Karen is from the WWF. She is the head of corporate and community sustainability in Hong Kong. And she really leads a lot of great initiatives and cross collaboration to advance Hong Kong's transition into sustainability. And so we've seen under her leadership flagship initiatives such as the Low Carbon Manufacturing Program and Loop Plus that's really supported a lot of companies in establishing baselines and taking climate action. So with that, I'll pass the floor to Karen, and please do put any questions you might have for her in the Q&A box. Thank you.
Okay. Right. You can see my screen, right? Okay, today I'm going to share the WWF risk filter suite. I guess everyone understands why we need to do or assess nature-related risks. Climate impact, nature and ecosystem valued at around $44 trillion US. And then there are more and more financial and regulations on encouraging companies to disclose on nature. And also as corporations or financial institutes, if we are not going to understand the nature-related risks, probably we'll have more business risks as well as challenges to resilience. So the WWF risk filter suite has been around for many years, and there are two tools under this suite. One is to assess the water risk, and then the other one is to assess biodiversity risk. So it's a tool for screening and prioritizations for companies and investors, as well as for private sector actors to take actions. What happened is we try to bridge the environmental science with decision making. Overall, we have 80 global scientific data set, 28,000 registered users, and 4 million sites assessed. The risk filter is assessment tools for nature-related risks for businesses. And it is a corporate and portfolio level screening and prioritization tools. What it is not a footprint assessment tools, and it's not a site level assessment tools. But Jenny just mentioned that in WWF Hong Kong, we do have other programs like low carbon manufacturing or the Loop Plus to help corporations to assess on individual site footprint as well as the business risk. So for the framework, we put in a lot of industry activity rating as well as the state of nature, environmental science data set. And then the user will input their site location as well as their activities. And after that, the water and biodiversity risk filter will give you a scoring and that will be an output for very, very initial action taken. I'm sure that everyone's familiar with this TNFD lead approach. And then I'm trying to map it out with the WWF risk filter Swiss. So what you're seeing now is the blue circle, which is addressing the dependency and impact screening. We're primarily using WWF biodiversity risk filter informed modules. And then on the orange circle, you see that we can use the WWF biodiversity and water risk filter explore module to address or to screen on the level, the L3 and L4, which is the interface with the sensitive areas or with the nature. And then the red part, the red circle is the WWF biodiversity and water risk filter, the SS module. And then it will help assess the risks and opportunities. So what kind of risks that we are addressing to? Primarily three. One is the physical risk, and then the second is the regulatory risk, and then the third one is the reputational risk. And on the lower side, you can see three publications from WWF. One is how this risk filter Swiss support the TNFD lead disclosure. And then the other two is the latest version 3 indicator documentation, and all the methodology as well as the indicator can be found in these two publications. So this slide would show and inform you about the risk hierarchy in the middle. So on the left-hand side is the biodiversity risk filter risk hierarchy, while on the right-hand side is the water risk filter risk hierarchy. So in each of the risk sector, we have different categories. Like for physical one, we have 4 categories for biodiversity risk filter and then 17 indicator, so on and so forth. So the key changes to the WWF risk filter Swiss version 3 is we added this regulatory deficiency risk dataset. So we like to emphasize that a lot of the framework in the market are addressing the regulatory compliance risk. So what happened in WWF risk filter is we are addressing the regulatory deficiency risk. What this means is we believe for countries or locations or jurisdictions that do not have proper regulations will lead to higher risk in terms of addressing future nature loss, biodiversity loss, or when your business are dependent on nature and biodiversity. So in WWF risk filter Swiss, we're addressing regulatory deficiency risk, not the compliance. And then the second one is the improvement in more granular data for the marine risk estimates. So in the last version, we have only 18, but right now we have 17 assessment area. And increased alignment with global framework like TNFD, as well as the water scenario archive, because of the science has already been outdated. So we kind of put the data archive, but for users that have already inputted their data previously, they can still go to the archive and look at their data. So key indicator to the statistics, we have 40 plus new data across both tools. About 75% of all indicator change across both tools, and new indicators have added. And also the new risk type, the regulatory deficiency risk. This is a case that we partner with MSCI to put the risk filter data into their geospatial asset intelligence. So what happened is we built the data into that existing intelligence tools, and then it enables all the activities as well as location-specific risk indicators such as water availability, pollution, ecosystem conditions for the risk assessment. And then now the tools, the geospatial asset intelligence, will not only inform risk related to the headquarters, but also to individual site. And it's so much more accurate or more specific to location, because oftentimes when we talk about biodiversity risk or water risk, is very, very location specific. And then I mentioned that there are different modules and tools. So I'd like to briefly talk about the biodiversity risk filter, the informed stage. And you can see the visuals like it's sectorial, and then it will highlight whether the industry is in high risk, which will be in red, or in the good state, which will be in green. So it's available on the website. And you can go and see specifically what sectorial biodiversity risk that you are in. And then the second modules is the explore modules, and it will be on a map visual. And you can see it in a global map, which regions or which countries are in higher risk, symbolized by deeper red color, and then which region are in lower risk in a lighter color range. And then if you like to upload your company data, whether it's location specific or your supply chain partners data onto the website, you need to start a login and then create your own account, and then you will become a portfolio manager. And then you can access location-specific data. And this is the most useful part, because you'll find the 3 different types of risks across your portfolio. And at the same time, we are building this app module, which will come by later this year. And this will be a response one to suggest some actions on. With that, I'd like to do a short demonstrations on how you log in and do the so this is the website that I mentioned, and I already created a login, and then what I'll do is just to log in my own account. I'll go to Portfolio Manager, and then you'll see your portfolio, because I do upload some of the data in. So what happens is, if you're a new user, you can just add your company, and then you add your company name, and then you do save. And then after that, you can, of course, add the site. And then if you like, okay, you can do add single sites. So it will show you you do a company name, and then you give them a site name, and then site activities. So site activities will have different industry sector, and then you like to state whether it's agricultural related, and then you see the group level, whether if it's a supply chain, you like to define it, whether it's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, or tier 4. And then you like to define it, whether it's a very important one in terms of site importance. So on and so forth. And then for each company, like the company A, I have uploaded total 7 sites. And then if I click into it, you'll see that all the 7 sites are shown on the website. And then you can either individually analyze the biodiversity, And then show the locations, and then over the site location and the map. And then next to it is the scaped risk scores. And then underneath is different risk categories, the physical risk as well as the reputational risk. So if we look at the scaped risk, then you'll see more data here. Like individual indicator, you see whether the risk level is high, medium, or low by different scoring. So that ends my demonstrations on the tools, and definitely you can log in and play around your own portfolio. And then my summary slides will be 3 messages. So nature-related risks are financially material, and then the risk filter switch can help prioritize where and what to act. And then the risk filter switch version 3 actually introduced a new regulatory deficiency risk, which will be very useful. There are 59 unit indicators. So I'll pass back to Jenny.
Great. As that's, I know we still have a couple of questions left here, but what we'll do is perhaps, Karen, if you don't mind, maybe answering the ones online, because I think we have Megan back, and so she'll just finish off her section, which is really to take us through how IBAT is used to assess and the location and evaluation under the TNFD framework. So thank you so much, Karen, and I'll just pass the floor back to Megan. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jenny. And apologies, everyone, for the technical glitch earlier. Hopefully it doesn't happen anymore. I'll just go back to the last couple of slides I have for my presentation, and I've been answering a couple of questions in the Q&A as well, so do keep them coming. So I'll just go through 2 case studies examples on the use of IBAT. So here's an example of how a South Korean holdings company, POSCO Holdings, had accessed the various IBAT features and incorporated their analysis in their TNFD report. So they have used the GIS downloads to produce a map overlaying their operation sites with the KBAs and protected areas, and also used the prioritization scoring within the disclosure preparation report to come up with that table of high, medium, and low you see in the bottom right of the slide, with other key indicators such as the physical water risk, which I believe they accessed from the WWF water risk filter. So beyond using IBAT for TNFD reporting, the platform has also been used by investors like Aviva Investors to help them more broadly with risk screening and due diligence. So the data provided here through IBAT helps them prioritize where to dig deeper with local data and experts upon making an investment decision. This data can also ultimately be contributed towards the group level sustainability reporting. So global screening is really at the start, and it's important to consider how you would then complement this with local data sets, with expert input, and with the site teams on the ground. So think about IBAT as that global baseline that helps you better understand and helps you better ask questions and target the follow-up works. So 3 key takeaways. IBAT supports the locate phase of the LEAP approach by allowing for early screening of assets against globally authoritative biodiversity datasets. IBAT brings together the protected areas, the KBAs, and the threatened species data to support various reporting requirements, alignment with biodiversity best practices such as the IFC Performance Standard 6, sustainable finance taxonomies and due diligence needs. And last but not least, global screening through IBAT can be combined with local and sector-specific data for deeper assessments and mitigation. So we did also do a webinar last year where we talked about how IBAT can be used together with Encore and the WWF Biodiversity Risk Filter. So a recording is also on our website if those on the call are interested. So thank you, and feel free to reach out to us for any support, training, or technical questions following this presentation. Sorry again for the technical glitch, and I'll hand back the time over to Jenny.
Great, thank you so much, Megan. And I'm glad we had the opportunity to see how the product actually aligns with the location and evaluation. Now, we have a few questions in relation to, how do we start this journey? How does NCOR, IBAT, WWF, how do they interlink? How should we be thinking about this? And so I'm very excited to welcome for our fireside chat practitioners who are in the field, who are supporting organizations, clients in the region and also locally to help answer some of these questions. And again, I really encourage people to put the Q&A into the chat box. This session will be moderated by Merlin Lau. He is Head Policy and Research of the Business Environmental Council, also my counterpart for the TNFD Hong Kong Consultation Group. He leads a team to really develop clear policy positions on climate and environmental topics in Hong Kong through undertaking research on latest domestic and international trends. And we also welcome Dr. Robin Kenish. He's a managing partner for ERM's East Asia business with over 20 years of experience in managing and directing environment and sustainability issues. And Yiki Cheng, who's an assistant sustainability manager from Gammon Construction Limited, where she supports the development and implementation of sustainability strategies, performance monitoring, and stakeholder engagement. So I'm very excited for this panel, and I'll pass the floor to Merlin. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jenny. And Robin, Yuki, you're here, right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you. And probably Jenny already introduced both of you. Actually, both ERM and Gammon, they are TNFD adopters with aligned TNFD disclosure year. I think ERM last year, and then also Gammon this year. So to really start this part, I think some of the audience are from Hong Kong. Maybe some of them are out of Hong Kong. Maybe sort of like introducing your work shortly in a way that I want to ask, like, how does like TNFD and its LEAP approach apply in your business operation? That will maybe you can provide a brief context on what do you use the LEAP approach for both of you. Maybe Yiki first. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm from Gammon Construction Limited. So basically, we are a construction company, a main contractor. We have operation in Hong Kong, but we also have operation in Singapore and mainland China. So every year we have around 100 active projects across Hong Kong and Singapore. We use lots of construction materials. So for our supply chain, construction materials is one of the key hotspots. So back to 2023, when TNFD just published their TNFD guidance, and to be frank, we don't know what TNFD is at that time, and we took some time to study the concept, the methodology, or the terminology in all the guidance material, and because they also published the sector guidance draft for our sectors. So, but reading that, I think it's not something entirely new to us because it's also largely cover climate change and pollution, resources consumption, ecology issues, all we have been dealing with in our daily operation. But just that we might not be that holistically view all these issues from nature perspective. And so we think TNFD, when we look at the LEAP approach, the guidance document, we found that it is a very systematic framework and flow to guide us to understand what are the nature, impact, dependency, risk, and opportunity to us, to our operation, and not only our direct operation, but also look at our value chain. Because in the typical environmental impact assessment under the EIA ordinance in Hong Kong, it mainly look at the construction's impact. That means our direct operation, but not looking at the value chain, the supply chain of the material. And it's also not covering the dependency as addressed in TNFD. That's why we think TNFD is a tool that give us some direction on how to holistically look at nature issues. But I think for us, we think their nature assessment is a bit similar to carbon assessment. Like it helps us to identify which part in our value chain have relatively high impact, like in carbon, which part in our value chain are more carbon intensive. So after that, we can focus on where we need to improve our approach. I think that's why we start the TNFD assessment with some pilot, because we want to test out the framework, because our operation is very dynamic and very complex. So we want to start with something small and high level. And we also consult the TNFD technical director, Emily, whether we can use some pilot project focusing on project level and certain construction material to do the assessment. And she fully agreed with this approach. And because we can use these pilot to taste the framework, taste the process, and we can refine the methodology and later on to expand the scope to more operation and material. Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
think that's our starting point.
Robin?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Merlin. ERM's a global sustainability company, so we've got 8,000 people in 40 offices around the world. So obviously, when we're talking about nature, one of the things we would look at, first of all, is our direct operations, which we've done from the point of view of our direct footprint. Most of our office are leased premises, so in terms of impact materiality, it's relatively limited. So in terms of sort of our interaction with nature, it really comes down to our supply chain, and in particular, as we're delivering our work for clients, and then the impact that our clients have on nature and how they interact with nature themselves. So maybe I can just sort of detail that in a little bit more, in a little bit more sort of focus. I mean, we will typically always use the LEAP process when we're talking to our clients around TNFD. And you know, I think as you know, in Hong Kong, there's many companies started to adopt it. In East Asia as well, many companies have started to adopt it, but often we will ask our clients to maybe pause and not necessarily dive straight into the LEAP process, but maybe use a discover process to start with, so that they can look at the TNFD documents, in particular around the 14 different disclosures, and then map their business against those different disclosures. Because many of our clients are already doing quite a lot when it comes to water programs, waste management, greenhouse gas emissions, climate actions as well. So they may already have quite a lot of biodiversity in particular work that they are already underway, but it might be siloed in different parts of the organization. So we try to sort of discover what they're doing at the moment with regards to the different aspects of nature. Do a little bit of benchmarking is always good. Have a look at what their peer groups are doing, so they can see what kind of gaps they might have. And then also discuss with them, I think more importantly, the appetite they have for looking at nature as a topic, and helping them on that first step to materiality, to understand, is nature a material topic for their direct operations? And is it a material topic for their indirect operations, whether that's upstream or downstream? And I think the LEAP process is a great way for us to start that discussion around materiality. You know, we can start to look at aspects of their supply chain. We can start to look at maybe even their finance portfolios, and see whether there are locations or sectors that are representing potentially high risk to biodiversity. And only then, when they understand what they have, can they then start to formulate policies and sort of targets and metrics around, you know, potentially even things like a nature positive ambition. So it's very much, you know, the way we'll look at it is sort of start from the beginning, discover what you're already doing, what your peers are doing, and then kick off with the early stages of the LEAP process. And I think Candice made a great point at the beginning, which was, you don't have to start with L or E or ALP, and you might revisit it. You know, your year one might be your first look-see, if you like, at the 4 different processes, and your second year may be much more of a deep dive, say, in the evaluate aspect. So I think that's where we look at it, but it's an excellent framework for us to start discussions with our clients on their nature impacts.
Thank you both of you. Actually, both of you mentioned the TNFD and its connected use with the supply chain, and I also saw questions just now raised, for instance, from FI, like how do I start with? I guess it's like they always the similar question on the complexity of value chain or / supply chain. We discussed this in the pre-panel call. Before we go into the tool, like what is your practical approach and advice to really tackle into the starting point of like supply chain scoping. So maybe back to Iki first. It's like practical sector to start with, and then Robin and then comment.
So for us, we purchase lots of different types of material. So first, we have to conduct a materiality assessment. What we use is we use the SBTN high impact commodity list, which is available online. And there are lots of material or commodity covering different sectors. And quite a lot of them are related to construction industry. So what we did is we screen those relevant to our industry, and also we select those top spend construction material to start the assessment. Like I said, we conduct some pilot assessment focusing on several types of construction material. We conducted 2 pilots. The first one only focused on the steel, timber, cement, aggregate. And later on, in the second pilot, we expand to cover more type of material like biodiesel, aluminum, glass, to have more understanding of our impacts over the supply chain. So I think this is a very good tool for you to try to narrow down your assessment scope. And don't be too worried if you haven't started your assessment. I think probably you might have some good understanding because of you have done some carbon management work over your supply chain. You might know which material are your carbon intensive material or high impact material. I think that is a good information source for you to try to select which material or product that is of high impact to start with. For us, that's our construction material, not only, but also our direct operation construction activity actually is also our key impact source. And secondly, some practical tips is nature impact is very location specific. So what we need is we have to get the geo coordinate to do the assessment for the locate phase, and after we screen out the construction material. But before getting the geo coordinate, we also did a full mapping for each construction material to know what is the step involved in the process, like the mining works or manufacturing works. Then we need to identify what location we need to obtain. And some information sources are very useful to take out the location, like the invoices, mill certificate, suppliers, sustainability disclosure. There's site-specific environmental impact assessment report, and even the environmental product declaration of the product you purchase. And even for some supplier or supply chain that is very complex, or if you have good connection with your supplier, we even organize meeting to talk to them to ask for more detail of their supply chain network to get the informations. And so all these type of method or information is useful for you to start with to get to know about the location or footprint of your value chain. And of course, it's the most ideal case if you can get all this information in your internal database. But yes, to be frank, you need to take some time to understand what exact information you need and whether they can be provided by your supplier, because not all the sectors or supplier are ready to provide these material. Like us, not all the materials can provide the information we require. So I think this is the step-by-step approach we did in the past, our learning from our pilot assessment.
Okay, Robin, you see different supply chain, like anything to add on top of this?
Yeah, maybe I'll give a few examples, and I'll try and finish my sort of examples with a financial institution and sort of explain how they looked at it and that process they followed. But maybe I start with some sectors that are a little bit more, I guess you could say, a little bit more straightforward to look at. So we were working with a tech sector client, manufacturing displays, and they have quite an extensive supply chain. So they wanted to look at nature. They were getting a lot of pressure from stakeholders to start talking about their nature impacts. and dependencies. Some of their suppliers are known to use quite large amounts of water and some natural resources in the supply chain. So we sat down with the client team to essentially map out who their critical suppliers were from the point of view of supply chain risks, but also from the point of view of materiality in terms of spend. So we could sort of drill down onto sort of the key aspects. So in this particular case, we looked at suppliers of the wafers that are used in the materials and also suppliers of chemicals. And we went all the way down to the location of the key manufacturing sites that were supplying the bulk of the product, so that we could use the locate tools to look at whether there were water stress pressures in particular in those areas. So we could see the impacts of the businesses on local water supplies, but also their dependency on the availability of local water. And that was essentially their first step at looking at this topic. And then the next phase will then go into, okay, what kind of opportunities or what kind of risks are present to the business? So that's one example in the tech sector. In the F&B sector, we had sort of a slightly different approach because our client had detailed information on some of their supply chain in the sense that they had, a bit like Yuki mentioned, sort of XY coordinates of key suppliers. So they could do the locate aspect quite well. You know, they could drill down to really specific farms. But in other locations, they were buying from a materials producer. So in that context, they needed to understand where they were sourcing the materials from, and they couldn't really get XY coordinates, for example. So it was more country or state level information. So again, that's a little bit higher level. It doesn't always give you the site specific information that you'd really want to have as part of the locate, but it did give us, you know, good information on climate stresses, on water stress, for example, on potential biodiversity risks. So that's, again, an approach that we could follow. We use databases like the WRI Aqueduct database for that process. I think on the final one that I would mention when it comes to supply chain is maybe on the finance sector side. Instead of supply chain, think about it in terms of value chain and assets under management. So we're working with one of the larger financial institutions in Asia. It was the first time they'd looked at nature across their assets. Now, again, in this context, they are investing in companies that then have lots of different assets around the world, maybe different sectors. So they can't necessarily directly influence the company's operations or the specific sites where the companies are sourcing their materials. So we took a sort of a higher level approach. Again, we focused using on core as part of the evaluate approach so that we could understand what sectors they're investing in. We broke that down according to the GICS codes, then looking at which of these sectors would have significant impacts on nature or significant dependencies on nature, and then look at it from the perspective of whether these sectors were located in certain countries, and then incorporate things like the biodiversity intactness index so that we could bring a level of country risk or country nature dependency to the topic. Again, it was very much a first step for them to prioritize material sectors from the perspective of impacts on nature and the perspective of dependencies on nature. So they could then take it to the next stage of looking at risks and opportunities, and then seeing whether they needed to modify any of their investment guidance documents or any approach when it comes to outreach to the portfolio companies or the assets that they are managing.
Thank you. Maybe next question, come back to the tools. I think both of you mentioned on and off a bit about different tools. And we also know the nature assessment is quite often location specific. The question would be like, for tools like IBAC, WWF, like risk filter or on-call, are they enough, like universally applicable in the case? Or do you have to take local adaptation or other alternative needed when you do the locate and evaluate exercise? Maybe some example, or you can also share like a particular insight for Hong Kong.
So for us, in our two pilot, we definitely use IPAD and WWF risk filter for locate and evaluate, and they are very useful for the quick screening to identify the project site or supply chain spot against the TNFD recommended screening criteria like the biodiversity, protected area, protected zone, and the IUCN red list. Yes, I think it's very especially useful for a company having the global supply chain network to give an overview. Where are the hotspots? I think most of the audience here are financial institutions. They have complex supply chain. I think another useful tool for us for locate is called Global Energy Monitor, which provide a location database for different type of high impact sector or product like coal, oil and gas, steel, concrete. They continue to expand the scope of the database. So I think you can take a look. It's called Global Energy Monitor as a location database. And going back to your question, whether we have looked at other tools for local assessment. Yes, we did take a closer look to our direct operation because our pilot focused on some construction project in Hong Kong. Thankfully, Hong Kong government, they have developed different useful tools and it's open source like the AFCD. They have the Biodiversity Information Hub to provide the species information and also the Common Spatial Data Infrastructure to provide the spatial data, EPD. They also got the Central Environmental Database. And also, actually, WWF, apart from the risk filter they also issue a state of nature report 205, which is very useful for us to further understand the state of the species, like whether they are nearly extinct, what's the level. It's very useful for us to provide more granular insight to look at the Hong Kong context to screen the operation that is maybe interact with a sensitive area or species. So, and that is for locate and for evaluate, apart from IPAD and WWF risk filter, OnCall is very useful and is also very recommended by TNFD. I think quite a lot of company use it as well. It provides a sector level view on the dependency and the impact. But what we did in our pilot, we also fine-tuned the rating with further literature review, and also we review our mitigation measure to adjust those rating. And this process allow us to better understand in more detail beyond the carbon and resources consumption to look at what are our interaction with nature in addition to the issue we have been dealing with.
Robin, any point to add about the tools?
Yeah, maybe I'll just give another example and some of the tools that we use. So we're working with a real estate firm, and they have global operations, and they also have some operations in Hong Kong as well. So in the locate phase, we use kind of like a suite of different tools for this. So we looked at, for example, biodiversity importance at the sites where they have their assets. So we looked at protected areas, for example, and we used various different databases for the protected areas. Obviously, you can use IBAT for the protected areas data. In this case, we also looked at databases from the UK and databases from the US on the location of conservation and protected areas. We also looked at mean species abundance, which is, again, a useful tool for us to understand sort of the integrity of ecosystems that were near to their asset sites. We looked at the amount of natural land in the vicinity of their assets, and we use science-based tools, network databases for that. And then for water stress, because they use water in the operations of their facilities and also in construction activities. So we use the WRA aqueduct database for that. So again, oftentimes we might pull quite a few different tools in that assessment, in the assessments, particularly in the locate phase, so we can make it as specific to the industry as possible. Again, for a pharmaceutical biopharma company in mainland China, they've got operations in China, but also around the world. So they were quite keen that they had the same data sets to be used at their first phase of Locate. So they didn't necessarily want us to get country-specific data sets. They wanted to just have sort of so they could compare apples and apples as such. So they used, again, IBAT data, they used mean species abundance data and the WWF water risk filter, because it provided a standard set of data that they could use at the first screening in the Locate stage.
Thank you. By way of the time, maybe I take one or two questions online. I see Candace is already trying to answer the TNFD/taxonomy question. I'll leave it to you for now. But maybe a specific question for Iki. That's not too much about the tool, but actually about Gammon's TNFD journey and his, alignment with the board. Like, how does the board see this? And, you get the blessing, or after the TNFD journey, has anything got changed?
Okay. So for us, every quarter we have a risk and opportunity meeting, present all the emerging market trend, the technical development, and also change in customer requirement related to climate and nature, maybe circularity as well. So specific to TNFD, thankfully, our board is very supportive, and I think for nature is not something new to us, because like for the pollution, resources consumption, climate change, all these issues we have been dealing with. But I think one point that bring to the board is we consider as a new business opportunity as well, because I think quite a lot of the TNFD adopter, most of them are the real estate developer. So we would tell the board, now you look at this. Now our customer, they are looking at nature issue beyond carbon, beyond circularity. So we have to get ourselves prepared and get familiar with all these nature and TNFD new requirements. So that's why after the first pilot, actually our second pilot, we partner with Swire Property to do an assessment for the commercial property, 6 Pacific Place, which we serve as the main contractor. So I think during the assessment, the result is very good, because it shows that the nature consideration has to be considered in the early planning stage, and early contractor involvement is very important. And also have a trust contractor is very important to help them to implement the mitigation measure in place. So I think for board, they found this all these assessment and the partnership with the our customer, they consider as an important and business opportunity.
Okay. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Iki. It's a fruitful 30 minutes for me, and also for the audience as well. I think we will close this section and pass the floor back to Jenny.
Merlin, for excellent moderation, and thank you so much for Robin and Iki as well for that sharing. My key takeaways is for board dialogues, conversations, please do check out TNFD's kind of like support help, which is actually in the webinar chat, on how to talk to your boards about starting the LEAP journey and how to convince them. Framing kind of the value chain as assets under management and putting a P&L and impact on the bottom line is actually going to be critical, I think, in terms of moving the dialogue forward as well. So as we wrap up the session, we hope that you now have a better understanding of TNFD's LEAP approach, some of the concrete tools that you can use, the steps available to help you get on your journey, start your nature-related reporting, and also remember to join the TNFD Hong Kong consultation group if you like to be and contribute to the sessions. And our next webinar will really focus on how the outputs of locate and evaluate translates into informing the assess and prepare components of the LEAP framework. So please do stay tuned. And also, once again, thank you so much to our speakers, our partners, our audience for your time, and also the Secretariat team for your commitments in terms of advancing nature-related risks, management and disclosure in the region. So please do follow us for the latest developments in sustainability and sustainable finance. Thank you.